Man United's owners hope to make a final decision on whether to spend more than £2 billion on a new 100,000-seater stadium by the end of 2024. Sir Jim Ratcliffe wants to build a Wembley of the North, and together with Trafford Council has put together a task force to assess the feasibility of a new stadium and redevelopment of Old Trafford. The task force is chaired by Lord Seb Coe and includes Greater Manchester Mayor Andy Burnham and former Red Devils skipper Gary Neville. Let me take you back to 2001, Kevin, when you did this at the Theatre of Dreams.
Ricketts. Nolan, terrific goal! Ball to the level, courtesy of the teenager Kevin Nolan.
Teenager? God, what was that, 30 years ago? Kev, obviously it's an unbelievable stadium. That ground for me is iconic. It was the one I always grew up wanting to play at. You know, that and obviously being at Spurs. But when Man United come around to play in that game, maybe at our era, it was the Dom, wasn't it?
Yeah, exactly. It was just, you know, the theatre of dreams. It was like when you walked out, and I remember obviously making my debut there and then scoring that goal. I remember like it was yesterday. I mean, I was very poor commentary, by the way, because it was much of a belter of a goal.
Was it a good goal?
Oh,
was it a belter?
It was a volley from about 30 yards outside, and it went into the
commentary. Did not do that justice. Sounded like it was a tap-in off the crossbar or something.
Exactly, yeah, knocked down by Ricketts, like all the other ones, like from 4 yards out. But yeah, it was a sweet volley, mate. Yeah, that got us back in the game, and then Ricks went on. We beat them 2-1. And they obviously do a proper play.
That was a proper team, them as well. Yeah,
team, but I mean, look, it's unbelievable, isn't it, to think that you're going to take that down to put another one.
Yeah,
but it has been in a bit of disarray, and the stadium, and you know, it's been.
It don't look good, does it? Really, in terms of like
because you just didn't expect that, did you? From what we've grew up with, you know, with Sir Alex Ferguson, everybody who was connected with Manchester United, that was like sort of the pinnacle where you wanted to be, where everything was just like, it was done properly, and it was, so to see it in the state it is at the minute, it is, you know, sad, but look, it looks like Sir Jim's trying to get it back to where it was, and look,
spend £2 billion quid on it. I mean, geez, it's going to look a bit special, isn't it? You think Spurs, right? I got White Hart Lane was for me like the most incredible stadium. Just playing there, loved it. The feel of it was, you know, where I grew up wanting to, you know, play me football. You go, how can they knock that stadium down? And then when you see what they've done,
unbelievable, man. That stadium is by far the best stadium I've been in.
Yeah, it's incredible.
It's incredible.
It is incredible.
Everything inside, they've just got everything spot on.
Yeah,
he's done an incredible job doing that.
The shame is I went to a Travis Scott concert there, and it's the most fun I've ever had.
Oh my God. Jesus.
Right, let's cross over to Los Angeles, where Man United are having pre-season. Joining us is Guardian's Manchester football correspondent Jamie Jackson. All right, Jamie?
Good morning or good evening from LA.
Oh yeah, it's nice out there at the moment.
Good evening, good morning.
What's the time out there? It must be like midnight.
Yeah, it's sort of 10 past 11 in the evening, so it's 8 hours behind.
Yeah. Look, James, how's pre-season looking at the moment for Manchester United before we get into the stadium?
Well, they lost to Arsenal in Saturday's game at the SoFi Stadium, which, by the way, is probably the state-of-the-art stadium in the world. I've never seen anything like it. I've got to be honest, I've never been to the Tottenham Stadium, so I've not seen that one. But by all accounts, this one is pretty, you know, ahead of anything. But yeah, United generally, I mean, they've had the two injuries. They had the two injuries on Saturday to Euro and Højlund, which is not great, obviously, you know, after they had 66 injuries last season, which kind of, you know, whatever you say about injuries not being excuses, I think 66 was a bit of a factor in how basically rotten they were in the league. So that's not great. We're waiting to hear what the prognosis is on those two. Now, that happened on Saturday. As I'm sort of saying, it's Monday evening here, so it's sort of 2 days later, and there's not been any news now. I don't know about you two gents or the listeners, but hopefully it's not bad news. But for me, the longer you don't hear anything, the more you start to think, you know, because we are out here, obviously, with the club. They've been very sort of helpful when they can. And, yeah, the sort of the answer today when I asked was, nothing today, meaning Monday. So we'll wait and see tomorrow. So that's not great. But in terms of the training, they had open training on Friday at UCLA. I was at that. Ruud van Nistelrooy was sort of taking a big part in that. General training, not just the forwards, as you might think of him, obviously a great striker. So, you know, this is sort of like, if you like, Brave New World, Sir Jim Ratcliffe's sort of leading. And yeah, the stadium or the sort of new stadium is going to be part of that by the look of it.
Yeah, I mean, look, in terms of this new stadium, is it going to happen? How are they do you know anything about the plans? Are they going to go over Old Trafford, knock it down?
Yeah, I mean, there is still the option to keep Old Trafford and sort of almost, stand by stand, if you like, revamp it. But the issue with that is you obviously lower the capacity while that's going on because, the stand that they're working on at any given time cannot be used because obviously it's been worked on. Or the other alternative is they don't play there at all. But, you tell me where Manchester United would go and play. Would it be at City? I doubt it. Would it be at Anfield? I doubt it. You understand what I'm getting at?
Yeah. Well, I mean, when Spurs done it, they went to Wembley, didn't they? But they had that option.
Yes, exactly. There you go. So I think even without that being an issue, I think that they really want, from what I understand, to sort of maybe have a really new, fresh start. And it's interesting what you said there about the Tottenham Stadium, Jamie. Obviously, you've been a fan of Spurs and playing there as a player, and then you sort of see what they've done, with the new one and sort of liking that. I think that's maybe, what's in their head. I mean, if they do go for that option, which I think the decision will be made by sort of December this year, they're going to try and make it, a key part of it will be you sort of look at it and you think, yeah, that is a new stadium, but it kind of feels or looks like a Manchester United stadium, if that makes sense.
Well, the biggest thing for me, John, is what I've always noticed going to that new Spurs stadium. Yeah, like the stadium's incredible, but it still has the same feel of like the journeys you take, the shops that are there, like the places that you walk around, where you park, and like the people that you see, the pubs. That's all still there, so it still has that Tottenham feel. I don't know, Man United, I've been there a few times. It's not in the heart of the city, is it? It's a little bit on the outskirts, on the touch, isn't it? But I guess people's journeys and that, people have been going there for 20 years. They don't want to lose that,
Yeah, and what you just said there, the same pubs and bars will still be there. So it's a good point you make. And, Colette Roche, who's the sort of chief operating officer at Manchester United, has been to many of the sort of big and newest stadiums of the world, and I'm pretty sure she's been to Tottenham's, and spoken to people like Daniel Levy about kind of what you just said there about keeping the experience. So I think it will be done properly. I think it's a Jim Ratcliffe stroke Ineos. Obviously, that's his company with all his executives in at the club. They mean business on and off the field. I think you've seen that sort of so far. A couple of signings, Joshua Xerxes, and obviously Yoro, who I mentioned, sadly got injured on Saturday. So I don't think they're messing around. I think they really do mean business. And I think to sort of relate it to this new stadium, if it is going to be a new stadium, I think it will be. I'd be surprised. I think most of us would be surprised out here with the information we've been getting if it wasn't that option. I would guess or I expect it to be a pretty smart new venue for sort of, for football.
Yeah.
Jamie, who pays for it?
Good question. Well, it's interesting. So the SoFi Stadium I just mentioned, this sort of state-of-the-art one here in Inglewood in LA, is basically been paid for all of it by Stan Kroenke, who owns Arsenal. And it's a $5 billion build that he's paid. So there's no private or public or local money. It's all Stan Kroenke's money, and that's how rich that gentleman is. Whereas this one we're talking about, well, so Jim Ratcliffe's one of Britain's richest people. He's sort of a tax exile in Monaco, but he won't be sort of footing the sort of £2.5 billion pound cost of this. It will be, as you're maybe indicating, Kevin, a sort of local government or sort of central government.
So the taxpayer,
mate.
Yeah, in a nutshell. Yeah. Now his
in a nutshell, he's out in Monaco living a dream on his yacht, and he comes over here, wants to build a stadium, wants the taxpayer to pay it.
In a nutshell, yes.
Yeah, all right, brilliant. Yeah, sums it up. Let's talk about Manchester City. Pep Guardiola and his future. Could he stay beyond now? Obviously, he's up next year, isn't he?
Yeah, I mean, I did a story about 10 days ago, sort of coming from a source who would definitely know the situation with Pep, that he won't make a decision it'll be sort of December, January time, maybe February time of the upcoming season. So he's got a year left, as you're sort of saying, it runs out next summer. Listen, every time this has come up, certainly after his first contract, those around him have thought that particular contract he's on would be the last one. And so they've said it again this time, possibly, and they really do think it will be, but they just don't know with Pep because, he's Pep Guardiola. He's got Savinio coming from Girona. That's his only new signing so far. I mean, don't get me wrong, we've got a month left, but what I'm trying to say is he usually, like a lot of these managers, top managers, they sort of thrive on new blood coming in and sort of freshening up the squad. And so what I'm getting at is if the team takes off, as it can do, obviously Manchester City, the start of this season, and it gets to sort of autumn or early winter where I'm talking about, it's going to make a decision and they're doing really well, they're flying, you might just think, well, why should I walk away? It's all set up for me here. On the other hand, there are these charges hanging over the club, which are going to be heard in sort of autumn time. Now, you tell me, gents, but players are human, the manager's human, everyone at the club's human. So you'd think that might be a factor. So, if there's a concern that they might be found guilty, and obviously they deny all the charges, will that affect early season form? And therefore, will that then sort of feed into what Pep wants to do with his contract? So I think it could go either way.
All right, James, top man, mate. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks, Jamie.
talkSPORT Breakfast, waking you up Monday to Friday morning from 6 a.m. on AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.